Welcome to As-Sahwa's podcast, encouraging revival of the mind and the heart, seeing the truth and standing for what is right in the age of overloaded misinformation. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all, and welcome to a bonus episode. Now, it couldn't be said without doing an episode of currently what is going on in the world. And right now, we're all engulfed with this situation in Palestine, Israel. Though it's coming less on Western news, we're not seeing as much as we were before. There is a change in language as well, and there is change in Western reporting as well, in terms of the massacres and the killings and the eyewitness type of accounts or accounts of Western journalists in Gaza and other areas, or who they've been talking to. We can see that there is a moderate change, and we're seeing different types of information that is coming out that we usually wouldn't see from Western media. Now, that's quite surprising. Okay, it hasn't halted or stopped the relentless bombings and the destruction of Gaza. It's still continuing. People are still dying in Gaza, and they're not killing as many as Hamas members as they wanted to kill. However, for us in the UK, in the Western world, there is a dynamic which we are seeing where there are certain figures that are coming onto shows where they are discussing about the issue of Palestine. And some of you may be aware of the Talk TV show on YouTube, which is presented by the likes of Piers Morgan. And we've seen the way he speaks to predominantly pro-Palestinian Muslim, majority of Muslim guests, and how he talks to them and how he discusses with them. But before we get on to that, I want you guys to understand, or a very, very small kind of definition type understanding of what is journalism. This is your host, Othman Abu Mike. So let's crack on with this show. And this show and this episode and this podcast is all about learning, teaching, discussing, and the most important part of what we are trying to do on this podcast is engaging. We want to engage with everyone, with all types of people. If you're a Zionist, if you're a fascist, if you're a racist, if you're a Muslim hater, if you're an extremist, whoever you are, the most important thing for us is to engage with each other in order to comprehend and understand each other's views. So, guys, before we speak about Piers Morgan and Talk TV, let's just get a kind of understanding what is journalism. Now, over the years, journalism, I believe, has changed because of the fact that technology has changed. So the news that would be coming out from one part of the world, let's just say from the East, won't reach the West immediately like we do today, because we have the technology of mobile phones, the internet, etc., social media, etc. When you're looking at journalism, you are looking at the production and distribution of what is being reported. So that's to do with events, ideas, facts, people. Okay. It's really about informing society. And there needs to be at least, if not entirely, it needs to be at least some degree of accuracy. It's important. Because not only is it just news, but really and truly, it is somebody's profession. Somebody has taken that role, accepted that role to bring some sort of accuracy to, an event that has taken place, to, something that's happened in certain parts of the world, and bringing it to rest of the area where they are. So let me give you an example. Let's just listen to some of the terminology that we hear. If you look at BBC News, Sky News in the UK, you hear Israel Hamas war. But then again, you change the channel and you'll see Israel Gaza war. And I find that quite intriguing because is it a war against Gaza? So that's the whole of Gaza, or is it actually a war against Hamas itself? Because 17,000 people have died so far in Gaza. And how many of them are actually Hamas fighters or Al-Qassam brigade fighters? How many of them are actually from there? We're hearing a lot of news about fighters surrendering. Yeah, but are they actually Hamas, or are they local people who are now forced to defend themselves because the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, has forced in and doing a ground invasion? Okay, or are these police officers with weapons that are fighting back? And we're hearing lots of stories now about it being all staged. You know, these people that are Hamas fighters given up, being stripped naked, etc. And we're gonna talk about that in a different podcast. But it is the news now. The example is if you listen to, say, Pakistani news in regards to Hamas fighters or Hamas, one thing you'll see is that they don't call them terrorists, they don't call them Hamas fighters, they call them mujahideen. You know, the ones who fight in the way of Allah. But in the West, they're called Hamas, the terrorists. Okay, and not in the whole of the West, because North America, Hamas as an organization is banned, but not in the whole of South America. In some countries in South America, most of Europe, it's banned. Okay, I don't think any country in Africa, as far as I'm aware, has banned them as an organization. Maybe one or two, maybe. Asia, hardly any. Only Japan, I think. Australia, not even in Russia. So I don't think in Russia either. However, the point I'm trying to make is the way journalism is seen today is not what it was built for. It needs to be neutral. It needs to be not biased. Okay. Regardless of the journalist's opinion or their personal belief, journalism should be all about being balanced. Now, there's a couple of interesting quotes that I found. Thomas Hendrik Ayers, the politician in Estonia, he said, "Fake news is cheap to produce. Genuine journalism is expensive." That's because of the fact that fake news is easier to sell than genuine journalism, right? You can pick up a newspaper and you will see from the headline the fake news or the spin on the certain news, not what it was like. And yet what you're going to see is that the one that is kind of fake news or the news that has spin on it will sell a lot more than something genuine, because it's short and sharp and certain terminology and wording is used. It catches your attention and then it kind of winds you up and it gets you ready. And then all those kind of racists and fascists out there, for example, like the immigration problem in the UK. I mean, it's not, let's be honest, immigration in the UK is not massive compared to other countries. Okay. Again, we can do another podcast about this. And the issue of Rwanda, where the British government wants to send asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda to do their cases, etc., and they may allow them, may not allow them, and all these things going on. When you will see racism prevail in the UK when journalists and the media hype the immigration issues up. Same thing with the issue of Palestine and Israel. When journalists, they need to be responsible. It is their responsibility to make sure what they're talking about is not biased. And they are responsible for how society reacts, because the first news they're going to pick up is that newspaper, is the news on Twitter or whatever it is. And and that they go to and they pick it up. And imagine you look at a newspaper article early in the morning, Hamas beheaded 40 babies, and they put a picture of a brown colored guy with a maybe a mask, or with a Palestinian scarf. Now that person has had an impression imprinted on their mind, and when they go out from the train station, go towards, he sees certain people wearing the same sort of scarf, okay, and looking at them, not knowing if they're Arab or Asian, but maybe he's Muslim, okay, and the hatred that he has for that person, the things that he's going to say on Twitter now, the racism that's going to come out of him. You as journalists will and have to bear responsibility for what you are reporting, because of the chaos that you're bringing in society. And I absolutely agree with Thomas when it comes to saying fake news is cheap to produce, because people want that spin. They want to listen to something, they want to read something and go, wow, because that's what's going to sell. Compared to a article with facts and figures and given the right information, and maybe it's not 1, 2, 3 columns, but it's actually 2 whole massive pages. Who's going to read that? Who wants to spend time reading all of that? People just want short, sharp news. But the problem with short, sharp news, you're missing all the right type of information. I've got another quote for you by Oscar Wilde. He said, "By giving us the opinions of the uneducated, journalism keeps us in touch with the ignorance of the community." But the problem here is a lot of the journalists are uneducated themselves. And we're not talking about education in terms of your degree or your PhD, meaning the education, the uneducated people in society, that drum up the beats of war, that drum up the beats of racism and immigration, and they're the problem, and this is the issue here, and they're the problem, and Hamas is the issue, and we need to get rid of them. But you know what? If you educate yourself about the history of Palestine, the history of how the Jews entered into Palestine prior to 1948, you'll realize, wow, there is a bit more to this than just that they happened. It just happened on October the 7th, and that was the only time, and therefore we got to take revenge. 40 babies beheaded. Guys, has anybody still answered this question yet? 48 babies beheaded. Any photographic evidence proven yet? Not one paramedic, not one medical examiner from Israel has confirmed that they have seen, and they have in the mortuary the 40 beheaded babies. So we need to stop talking about this, because there's no proof about it, and that's the most important thing in any court of law. The most important thing is evidence and proof. And journalists also need to bear this in mind, that if you're going to make a statement, about something, then you need to have the proof behind it. You can't just go ranting and raving about some comment certain people made, talking about Palestine and Israel, and the beginning, of the same thing of 40 babies being beheaded. Remember, Genocide Joe. Okay, I'm going to try to be partial. What's his name? Joe Biden, when he visited, and then he came back and he gave this conference and he said, information has been given to me. I have seen the pictures or whatever he said about the beheaded 40 babies, but they never emerged. In fact, the White House had to turn around and say, not true. That actually didn't really happen. He didn't see anything. Again, as journalists, you bear the responsibility of passing on the news which has been incorrect. And you need to hold your hands up and say, actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that in the first place. Let's just now that we have a bit of an understanding, hopefully, regarding journalism and the responsibility of journalists, let's just mention a few things about Piers Morgan. He is a journalist. He studied in college, etc. Studied journalism. Let's go back to the Daily Mirror, as he was the editor in 2004. Now, he got accused of he got the sack. He lost his job because he authorized, or they produced fake photos of British soldiers abusing Iraqi prisoners. But saying that, let's be honest, a lot more information did come out regarding the abuse of Iraqi prisoners, the rape of Iraqi women and young teenagers. Okay, that's another subject, that's another topic itself. But on this case, Piers Morgan was sacked in 2004 for allowing the issue of fake photos, etc. But it doesn't stop there. Then he had a lot more problems as he was the editor of the News of the World, okay, in regards to the phone hacking scandal, right? And when he was asked in one of the interviews, he said investigative practice that everyone knows was going on at almost every paper in Fleet Street for years in regards to phone hacking. You know, it just doesn't stop there, really and truly. Okay. And, he got shattered. He got absolutely shattered in regarding to this phone hacking situation. And it seems that Pierce is always trying to get himself into some sort of problems and issues, because then again, it doesn't stop. Remember the whole thing about Meghan Merkel and the issue of what she said about the issue of racism because her child would be mixed race, etc. Then he went on a rant and rave, and I remember watching that program on ITV, Good Morning program, where he's having a debate with one of his own colleagues, and his colleague was a mixed race person from the UK, and he's telling Morgan about how he grew up and the problems he felt and the problems that he had being mixed race. I believe his mother was white and his father was black. Now, they went on this discussion, and Piers Morgan had a sissy fit. He got up live on TV and walked out of, I believe it was live, he walked out of the studio. I'm not having this. I'm not having this. He became, I don't know what happened to this guy. I mean, that's not the attitude of a real, true journalist, to walk out on live TV in regards to this. And then, obviously, you can see the kind of person he is, right? He's not an impartial journalist at all. In fact, I question his journalism, the kind of person he is. Now, a couple of years ago, this channel, Talk TV, came about on YouTube. Who is the founder of Talk TV is very important for us to understand. And you will understand why Piers has suddenly become a lot more kind of anti-Muslim, right-wing-ish. Okay, I'm not accusing Piers Morgan of being purely anti-Muslim, but I'm just saying his attitude towards Muslim has changed over the years. Okay, since he's come on to Talk TV, he's gone a lot more different than he used to be, right? Who is his boss? Who owns Talk TV? Rupert Murdoch. Now, who is Rupert Murdoch? He's an Australian-born American media tycoon. And he entered the British television market in the late 80s, early 90s. He was the one who launched Sky News here in the UK. And then he entered the US and Australian television news markets with Fox News and Sky News Australia. Now, guys, my advice to you, go onto YouTube and you can watch these channels, okay? Fox News is unbelievable. It drives you mad, okay? It's the worst. You can't even call it news. It's absolutely rubbish. There is no such thing as journalism. When this Palestine thing broke out, you had one of the Fox News journalists speaking about Palestine, but mistakenly, look what she says. She said, look at Pakistan. They are deporting so many Afghans. And you're like, what are you talking about? Why are you mentioning Pakistan? This got nothing to do with Pakistan. She misunderstood Palestine, Pakistan, and she said some other crazy things as well. not only that, they are so right wing in their opinions and the things they say, and they are fake news. They come up with so much utter rubbish. Is unbelievable, right? Sky News Australia, I've watched them so many times, and they are unbelievably so openly. They are a racist channel. They say so many, things indirectly, and Surprising thing is, Sky News in UK is a lot more different. I don't know if that's to do with the regulator who regulates the news and who regulates TV. Maybe it's different in certain countries, but in the UK it's a bit different. Recently, there was a Sky News edit or program that was done regarding Usman Khwaja, who is the Australian-born cricket player who plays for the Australian cricket team. And there's some controversy that supposedly he sparked because he had written on his boots, all lives are equal or something of that nature. And this guy had a bit of a rant on Sky News Australia, saying all sorts of things. So guys, watch that, right? Watch that. You can see that on YouTube, and you see the way Fox News and Sky News Australia, the way they are so right wing, but coming from Rupert Murdoch. Okay, this guy is a Zionist supporter, and he's a right winger. Okay, in fact, there's a quote from him. He says, "I am not Jewish, but the Israelis are fighting the same enemy we are." In an article that he wrote once, "I'm not Jewish, but the Israelis are fighting the same enemy we are." You don't live in Israel. You're in America. Okay, who is the same enemy that you are? Hamas is not an international organization. Hamas, Al Qassam Brigade, and Islamic Jihad, and all these groups that are fighting in Palestine are fighting for the liberation of Palestine to what it was prior to 1948, or if you want to go back to 1967 borders. Now, how is Rupert suggesting that the Western enemies have the same enemies? It's a different place, different thing altogether. Why would you mention that? Or are you trying to insinuate something else about maybe Muslims generally? Are you saying that Muslims generally are enemies? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Maybe Rupert would like to come on to our podcast show and explain himself. I don't know. The invitation is there. It's open for you. So the point I'm trying to make is that you have, literally speaking, a right wing TV show or elements of right wing. Okay. And then you have some strange presenters on there as well, or people who host the program. Okay. One thing I always remind everyone is, don't forget Rupert Murdoch. He owns, like, I don't know, over 100 newspapers around the Western world. And when the first Iraq war happened, he was instrumental in whipping up the whole frenzy about going to war and drumming the beats of going to war in Iraq. Okay? This is the same person who pushed the public opinion about supporting the government to going in the war for Iraq. But I remind everyone that there was 1 million people who marched against the war in Iraq in London, just as a reminder. So you can see the mentality that TV shows such as Talk TV have, especially with a Zionist supporting right wing. It's a strange thing to say, isn't it? That we are seeing a strange relationship between right wing figures, racist, fascist figures supporting Israel. And I promise you, we will do a podcast on this where we will discuss this unholy partnership that we are beginning to see that is happening here. Okay. And we will come with proofs, and we will have a more discussion about that. So you have people like Julia Hartley Brewer, who used to be on LBC. I don't think she's on LBC anymore. She might be. I stopped listening to LBC, to be honest, quite a long time ago. and I used to listen to her discussions. I, in fact, went on to LBC and had a few views, and we had discussions. If you see some of her Twitter comments and her going to the demonstrations for Israel, etc., very, very pro-Israel, anti-Palestinian stance that she has taken. Okay, so I see her very pro-Israeli, very pro-Zionist. Then you have the likes of Nigel Farage, who also come onto the show. I don't know if he's a presenter or he's just hosting certain programs. I'll be honest, I don't waste my time watching, Talk TV. I watched it once or twice and I couldn't take it anymore. Right? It's just far too much. Then you have this right-wing fascist type who thinks he's some sort of think tank scholar, Douglas Murray, who just put in YouTube Douglas Murray in Israel, and it's quite funny, quite Hollywood type of. Well, he tried anyway. He didn't really get there, where he's where he's on the interview. He's being interviewed by Piers Morgan, and then he looks up and he's like, "Oh, there's a rocket coming! There's a rocket coming! Rockets coming from Gaza!" He dashes around, but really, if you look at it and you see where he is, Gaza's behind him, and the rocket's coming kind of from the other direction. If there was a rocket in that first place, and there wasn't no recording of the so-called rocket, trying to be all dramatic and jumping out the way and hiding. Okay, then he comes back on, yeah, I'm safe, and Piers Morgan saying, "Oh, Douglas, take care, be safe." It's an absolute joke. Douglas Murray is a dangerous character who is only spreading hate, with his kind of colonial, racist type of ideas. And we will speak about Douglas another time and his team that he has also. Now, coming back to Talk TV, we see how Piers Morgan interviews certain people in certain ways. So speaking about Palestine, speaking about the issue of the attacks and the bombardment of, and let's be honest, Piers has come out on Twitter and said, this is sad to see so many Palestinian dying, civilians dying, and children dying, etc. But I don't think it was enough for him to say Israel needs to stop. Israel is doing something wrong. He won't criticize them, obviously, because, come on, let's be honest. The guy is being paid by a Zionist supporting right-wing figure, Rupert Murdoch, okay? He's not going to go against his own boss in that sense. So, it's kind of the beginning of the end of journalism, as I see it, with a lot of journalists. So you had people like Hussam Zamlot, who was the Palestinian ambassador to UK, Mohammed Hijab, Abdullah Andalusi, Abdul Wahid, and Dili Hussein. And these guys are activists, are journalists, YouTubers, etc. Okay. But the one thing and the only thing Piers was pressing was, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? When Piers Morgan was interviewing Ben, he turned around and asked him about, if your son turned out to be gay and he wanted to marry, etc., another man, what would you do? And he said, look, as a Jew, I take this stance from my religion. And Piers was so nice to him and said, oh, well, no, I understand, obviously, from your religious point of view. Now, compare that to all of the Muslims that he's interviewed so far on the issue of Palestine and Israel. What do you see? You see him constantly attacking, right? And just interrupting, not allowing them to finish their sentence, okay? Forcing them to say certain things and putting them on that spot. And let's take this example of Dr. Abdul Wahid. When he came on from the group called Hizb ut-Tahrir, and he asked him questions about your demonstrations, you're asking armies to intervene and to go into Palestine to stop the war, etc., liberate it, whatever you want to call it. Now, what happened? Abdul Wahid turned around and said, well, we're not talking about groups going in. We're asking legitimate countries having legitimate armies to intervene to stop the bloodshed. What's wrong with that? Okay. He wasn't happy with the answer, and he kept pushing him. Do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? coming up with it and not allowing him. And Abdul Wahid was forced to keep saying to him, allow me to finish my sentence, stop interrupting me. And then the conversation went on, and then the the strange thing that happened was when Abdul Wahid asked him, why do you think so many women are becoming Muslim? And what was Pierce's rant and anger in when he turned around? Oh, because they want to become oppressed. That's absurd. Because they want to be oppressed. Why would you want to insinuate that Muslim women or women that become Muslim are oppressed in the first place? Why do you have to? Because again, it's this right wing mentality that people like Piers and the right wing media, the right wing journalists that I've explained to you guys already now, that are connected to this show, and others. Now, the point I'm trying to make is, if we know there's people like this type of journalist called Piers Morgan, and the agenda that they have to demonize the Palestinian cause, and really Muslims and Islam as well, there's no doubt about it in my mind, the way they speak about Islam and Muslims, then we are indirectly supporting them. You know how YouTube works. You get X amount of subscribers, you get X amount of likes, or not likes, sorry, you get X amount of views, you will get paid for that. Now, just imagine this. Since the Palestine-Israel situation has occurred, Talk TV show has hit around 2 million subscribers, okay, because of these type of interviews and people going on there and the coverage of the Israel-Palestine situation. They're getting paid for people viewing them. People like us are giving them views, even though we don't want to be, we are indirectly supporting them. So I'm actually making this call. I'm not even talking about the issue of boycotting. I'm saying there should be an absolute cancellation of people like Piers Morgan, of right-wing media, and no one should even entertain any kind of discussion or interviews with the likes of Talk TV and especially Piers Morgan and all these other right-wingers. What you will see is they will get desperate now to bring on other pro-Palestinian Muslim type activists, and then he will try. I mean, look, he went to the extent, Piers, on his Twitter, where he got absolutely hammered. If you read his comments and how people responded to him, majority were in support of Dr. Abdul Wahid. Many non-Muslims said the way Abdul Wahid spoke, it made us turn to Islam, read about the Quran. Okay, so it's quite amazing that this reaction happened, and it's quite positive more than negative. However, now is the time for people to start boycotting, cancelling people like Piers Morgan and Talk TV. They're absolutely not worth it. Go to those types of media outlets where they will be fair. Okay, we spoke about journalism being fair and unbiased, and that is what needs to happen. So, people out there, my brothers and my sisters, my guests, ladies and gentlemen, all I'm trying to say right now is you need to speak to the right people, discuss with the right people, okay? Because you will become a target. We've seen how Piers included in his tweets NHS, insinuating that you have people like Dr. Abdul Wahid working for the NHS, who is a extremist, who calling for jihad, etc. Okay, in a way, they're indirectly trying to get him to lose his job. And we've seen that. We've seen that around the globe. Many Muslims, many pro-Palestinians have lost their jobs, have been arrested because of the comments that they've made. So we have to take the stance. We have to take a positive stance. I'm not saying don't talk to everyone, okay? We need to have that engagement. We need to have that discussion. And this is what this podcast is about. However, people like Piers Morgan, Talk TV have a political agenda. Everyone needs to be smart on how and what they are talking about. So I will leave it there. Just a reminder to everyone, be very careful when it comes to speaking to the media, as this will get a lot of people in trouble. And to be honest, they are looking for sound bites. They are looking to make news where you might get in trouble, but they've made money that they've been looking for. And they're looking for those things that will give them clout. So I'm not saying about boycotting, I'm saying absolutely cancelling certain newspapers, certain media outlets, and certain figures. Thank you very much for joining me today with this bonus episode. And as usual, I want to remind everyone the most important thing that we are trying to do in this podcast is to learn, to teach, to discuss, and to engage. Guys, don't forget, we've got a whole array of topics now. Podcasts have been launched. Go into our YouTube channel, go onto the other podcast platforms, and you'll see our shows there. Please, like I said to you, the most important thing is we want to hear your opinions. We want to hear your suggestions as well, and even your corrections. So thank you very much for joining me. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all.